The Essendon VFL side has lost by 29 points to the Casey Demons on Saturday night in what was a pretty high standard game, a pretty entertaining game in freezing conditions. The Bombers only had 9 listed AFL players playing, which I believe was the least amount they've had this year. It certainly was less than what the Demons had, I believe. We're going to talk about the match right now. So after the disaster of the senior side losing by 95 points, that was just a horrible day. I kind of wish I wasn't there, but I endured every single second of it. I was able to get home and watch probably the last 3 quarters or so of the VFL side. And what you all want to know is, how did the AFL listed players go? Because it's more relevant than ever, given that we still have many injuries and a lot of them won't be back for at least 2 or 3 weeks at the earliest. And will there need to be changes after the disastrous outcome against the Cats, the near 100-point loss? So we'll go through those players and we'll assess how they went and what their prospects are for the rest of the year, and maybe even their prospects for staying on the list. Number 1, Elijah Tsatas. He is usually the best player or in the top 2 or 3 every single match he plays in the VFL. It's kind of good that he's, able to perform at this level well, but also frustrating because he wasn't even an emergency for the senior side, which is really concerning because I can only assume there must be something he's not doing that the club want him to do, because Hobbs gets dropped and Durham comes out through suspension. So there's 2 midfielders come out of the side and he still can't make his way in. I know they brought in 2 tall players into the seniors, but even so, you'd think he would, be a chance to come in as an emergency, but he wasn't even an emergency. So it is concerning. He played really well again, though. He had 30 disposals, 1 mark, 3 tackles, 8 clearances, and 15 contested possessions. And to throw in there, he also had 3 intercept possessions. So we always talk about his kicking and all that sort of thing, but I really feel as though before the end of the year, they just need to give him a go. They just need to give him a go, because the last thing we want is for him to request a trade and then he goes somewhere else and becomes a gun. It's one of those things you can just see happening, can't you? You can just visualise that is going to happen. So, but anyway, he was one of our better players and perhaps our best player in the Saturday night VFL game. If you do like this content, please hit the like and subscribe button. It only takes a second to do so. It doesn't cost any money. It helps the YouTube algorithm, and I'd really appreciate it if you could do that right now. Dylan Shiel, I was kind of surprised Dylan Shiel actually wasn't selected in the senior side this week, just because of how young it was, just to shore up a little bit of experience. I can understand the argument for not having him in there. Given that he may get delisted at the end of the year, I can understand the argument for not playing him again. But there is a case for playing senior players. You don't want to have too many young players in the side at once, otherwise there's just no leadership. So I kind of would have liked to seen Dylan play in the game against Geelong. I think it would have been handy for the side to have him, just a senior player for them to look up to. But anyway, he had 26 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles, 7 clearances, 11 contested possessions. So he had a good game, and he kicked 2 goals. So a good game from Dylan Shiel. So, whether he will come in next week. Look, we've got a 5-day break going into the game against Fremantle. So, look, I think Goldstein is probably going to come out, and Visentini will probably come in just due to the 5-day break and the trip to Western Australia. But will they play Shiel off a 5-day break, given that he also played on a Saturday night? I'm not sure. We'll find out in selection on Wednesday. Ben Hobbs, had 19 possessions, 1 mark, 6 tackles, 6 clearances, 7 contested possessions. He looked like he had a reasonable game. He's obviously capable, more than capable, of being a very good VFL player. I think he did need this run in the VFL. He's been, I think, pretty poor, pretty average in recent weeks in the AFL. I think his kicking needs work. Why do we always seem to recruit players whose kicking is average? I know he's got good qualities. I mean, if that was Hawthorn, for example, Hawthorn would never recruit a player that can't kick. They always recruit players that can kick. That's one of the reasons they were after D'Ambrosio from us, remember? He's got flaws. D'Ambrosio is not a perfect player. He's got a lot of things he needs to work on with his game, but one thing he can do is kick. And it's one of the most important parts of the game, probably the most important. If you can't kick, then you can't hold possession of the ball. You can't hold possession of the ball, you can't score. So Hobbs really needs to work on that during the off-season. I think he'll stay on the list. I don't think he'll get delisted. But I can't say that about the year after, right? He's got to work on his game and he's got to show improvement and he's got to be able to kick 50 metres, I reckon. I reckon that's a must. Jai Menzie, he kicked a goal. He had 18 disposals, 4 marks, 4 tackles, 6 contested possessions, and looked like he had a pretty reasonable game. I don't think he'll be on the list next year. That's just my opinion. He seems a little bit out of favour. He's still youngish, but I don't think he's at the point where he's going to improve enough. There's other players sort of seem to have taken that position, like Kako, Oscar Smart's now in the team. So it's going to be hard for him, but he had a reasonable game. Oscar Smart himself, I saw him make a nice little run down the outer wing, which looked pretty impressive. It doesn't come up on the stats. It looks like he's got a bit of pace about him. I've never really noticed that about him, but it does look like he's got a bit of run. He didn't kick a goal, which is kind of unfortunate because he's kind of in the team for that. But he kicked. He had 12 disposals, 3 marks, 3 tackles, and he had 3 contested possessions. Hopefully he can continue to work on his form and maybe get a senior berth by the end of the year. Reece Unwin kicked a goal, 1 goal, 1 actually. Had 11 disposals, 3 marks, 2 tackles, 1 clearance, 3 contested possessions. At this stage, he's not really doing enough in the VFL to warrant a senior call-up this year. His numbers usually, and I know numbers aren't everything, there's more to it than that. Often the coaching staff give these players jobs and we are often unaware of what their, the tasks that they've been given. But, I mean, every week he sort of ends up with, 12 possessions, 12, 13 possessions. I really don't think he's ready yet. I think he probably needs another season in the VFL at this stage before he could potentially make an AFL debut maybe later next year or something like that. I just don't think he's ready at the moment. I think he'll stay on the list, but I just think he's just not quite ready. Liam McMahon, probably the standout. So Liam McMahon, even when he was playing with Carlton in the reserves, was kicking 3 or 4 goals every week. I think he kicked actually 3 or 4 literally every single week except one week where he kicked 2. He just knows how to find the goals. He's a beautiful kick. You can see in some of the images I've overlaid, you can see him kicking a couple of goals. He had 9 disposals, 7 marks, 6 tackles, which is good because he's not known for his tackling. He normally is quite low on that stat. He also had 5 contested possessions, but importantly, hit the scoreboard 6 times. 4 goals, 2. So he could have kicked 6 goals. So that tells me that he's got every chance to be there for a senior call-up. And given that there might be some outs this week because of the 5-day break, just to rest some players, not just because of performance or form, but just, to get fresh legs in. And I know he played on the Saturday night, so I guess it doesn't really make sense in that sense. But he's young and he would, be obviously enthusiastic and over the moon for his first game if he can, get one against Fremantle. So I think he's a big chance to make his debut. If not this week, then soon. But he's continuing to kick goals every time he plays. Alwyn Davey, just not really doing enough. 7 disposals, 2 marks, 4 tackles, 2 contested possessions. Just not putting the numbers on the board. Look, he'll be 22 when the season starts next year. I think given the constraints or the difficulties of staying on the list, given that we've got sort of 4 extra players now on the list, if you like, with the mid-season draft, and we have to cut. Now it's going to be more difficult. The threshold for staying on the list is much harder. I think Davey probably is in his last season, so he's going to need some extraordinary form, I think, in the next 6 or 7 weeks to stay on the list. Kale Gerine, the big forward, got injured, unfortunately, in the third quarter, hurt his shoulder. He just had a few stats. It doesn't really matter what the stats were because he did hurt himself. Hopefully it's not too bad. He was in a sling, so another tall player. It's just anyone over 190 centimetres just gets injured. It's just insane. Look, I don't think he was in the mix to play this year. I just don't think he was. So I don't think it necessarily hurts the senior team or anything like that. But it's unfortunate for him. Hopefully he can get back on the park and it's not too serious. Lastly, not a listed player, but Adam Swade, the academy prospect, played his first game for the Bombers today. He was playing for the Calder Cannons and now he is playing his first game in the VFL, to just pigtail on the back of Hussein Al-Achkar, who kicked 3 goals in the VFL. It was either last week or a couple of weeks ago. He played his first VFL game as well. So the two of them, 2 academy prospects, have played a game. So Swade actually kicked a goal. Didn't really do too much after that. I watched what I could. I didn't see too much of him. Had 10 disposals, 1 tackle, and that was really all he was able to get. Did kick a goal. You could tell it was a step up in standard, obviously going from playing against, kids under 18s to playing against, literally grown men, big men. It's a huge, huge step up. And, Adam Swade will need to obviously, spend probably a full season or so playing, probably reserves football before he's ready to play seniors, presuming he does get selected in the draft by the Bombers later this year. So that is it. What do you guys think? Did any of you watch the game? What do you think about the team? What do you think about the selection? Who do you think should come in or out of the team? Do you think many of these players will stay on the list? Who do you think will, stay or get cut? I'd love to hear what you've got to say in the comments. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to this channel. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.